I'm here subbing today for Richard Fredrickson, and how lucky I am to have this opportunity. Today it is my privilege and my pleasure to introduce to you Walt Willey, also known as Jackson Montgomery for 27 years on All My Children, and also Wild Bill Hickok. So, greetings. Great to have you with me.
You know, I love Richard, but I wanted to do this with you, so I canceled last week. That was the real reason. It wasn't that I was doing another project. It's just I wanted to work with you. And 27 years, you've upped it a couple of years. I appreciate that. It was almost 25 years, but I like the extra couple of years.
We'll just stretch it out a little.
Just let my SAG-AFTRA pension know that I had 2 more years on that show. Please, if you would, it'd be great.
It's so good. You're here in Joliet.
I am.
From a scary trip from Nashville.
Scary trip from Nashville, yes.
With all the snow and the ice. But this morning, you
would have been scarier in a plane, though, I think, so I'm glad I drove.
Yeah, but you still had a white-knuckle flight. But today, you talked and worked with our students at Joliet Central High School.
I did indeed.
And that's the in-school program that we're going to talk about today. And you will also be working with the Joliet West drama students.
Beginning next week.
Beginning next week.
Right.
So where we come into this whole wonderful Wild Bill Hickok
experience. Yes, I'm dying to hear where we come into this. Go ahead, Liz.
Because Walt is from Ottawa, Illinois. Went to school, graduated from Ottawa High School. And I met him through WJOL when we were doing a radio interview for your summer musical.
That's right. Okay. Well, not a musical, the big summer play.
Well, Auntie Mame was last year.
Auntie Mame, but not Mame.
No.
Mame's the musical, Auntie Mame's the play. You know that.
I do. So anyway, we worked together on that, and he was telling me about Wild Bill Hickok. So I saw on Gunslingers,
yes,
the American Heroes Channel,
right,
and Discovery Channel,
right.
I saw Gunslingers, Wild Bill Hickok. Marvelous, marvelous show. And then Walt was telling me in our conversation about the in-school program. I said, so why not Joliet Township High School?
It's perfect.
So
it's perfect.
Today you had your first day?
I did indeed. I taught 3 classes with the drama teacher there, Joe Hoyt. Some very talented kids. Some very talented kids. You know, I've often wished that I had had the opportunity for someone to come in and talk to me in high school, or whether in the school or not, to just let me know that actors can come from everywhere, that they're not grown on trees in California, which I evidently thought they were, or New York, and that you can be from a small town or a mid-sized city or a suburb or an inner city, and if that's your passion, you can. It's available to you.
Mm-hmm,
you know, you don't. You know, if you want to be a doctor, well, you're looking at 8 years of school. If you want to be a lawyer, just about the same. If you want to be an actor, you know, you do need to study. But it's more about the passion for it.
Well, we have very good community theater here in the Joliet area.
You do.
And you can be a doctor, but you still can be an actor.
That's as an avocation. Theater as an avocation.
Absolutely. And we have many wonderful actors. But in your telling your story, I want you to take us back to the beginning of when you were...
I was born in a small town in Illinois.
In Ottawa. But also, Wild Bill Hickok was born in a small town. So
sure was.
Give us that story.
Sure. I have a theater group in my hometown. And we were in our 2nd season. We were doing Arsenic and Old Lace. And my son, Chance, had come in to play Officer O'Hara. And he and I were going to the closest Amtrak station in Mendota, Illinois, to pick up my wife and daughter who were coming in to see the show. And I was looking for a one-man show to do. The writing was on the wall at All My Children. It was clear it wasn't going to be around for very long. I've been doing stand-up comedy as a headliner for 20 years at that point.
I saw you at Zanies in Chicago.
See me at Zanies. And I was kind of over that. But I like the idea of a one-man show. I kind of like the idea of I've always been kind of a just let me take care of it, just let me do it all, and that's the ultimate in a one-man show, doing it all. But I had read quite a few, some on Lincoln, of course, being a natural choice for around here at least, and I just didn't find anything I thought was a good fit. And on our way to Mendota, we took kind of a circuitous off the interstate route to get there, and we went through a little town called Troy Grove. And we saw a sign that said, "Welcome to Troy Grove, birthplace of James Butler, Wild Bill Hickok." And this is in the same county where I was born and raised. And I was like, I didn't know Wild Bill Hickok was born here. How could I not know that? Because men my age, all of us on TV at night were Westerns.
Absolutely.
That's all it was on. How did I not know that the most...
and Bonanza
Bonanza.
and all
How
of
did I
those.
not know that the most, clearly, arguably the most iconic of the Western lawmen was born in my county? How could I not know that? I must have forgotten it, I guess. I began to research him. The first thing I found out is that he was about 6'2" and blonde and blue.
And
so
there you
we
are.
were physically alike, as opposed to Buffalo Bill Cody, who was a little bitty guy. So I began to research him, and I found him a fascinating personage. The most fascinating thing, I think, at first, Lynn, that drew me to learn more about him was he was the very first media-generated celebrity. He came in at a time where the printing press was just starting to make its way to the West, where the newspapers would cover things and their articles would get picked up everywhere. The Telegraph had just moved west of the Mississippi. And so he came at a time where somebody could write about him in a magazine like Harper's Monthly,
Sure.
which is where he was first written about. He gave an interview to a man named George Ward Nichols in 1865 after the war. When he came back from scouting in 1867 for the cavalry, he found out that he had taken this conversation and turned it into an article that appeared in Harper's and then was picked up by every newspaper to the east of the Mississippi. So all of a sudden, Hickok found himself to be the most famous man in America.
Is that right?
Second only to Lincoln, who is now dead, you know.
Sure.
Excuse me, everybody knew who he was. All the excursionists visiting the West wanted him to lead them out and show them the West. And he did. He was only too happy to. The problem was, a lot of what was printed was not true. Who made the exaggeration or the falsehood is anybody's guess. Probably a combination of Hickok, who never expected it to be printed, and George Ward Nichols, who wanted a hero to write about. The upshot was he found himself famous.
All right. In reading about, and you're telling the story of Wild Bill Hickok, all of the job descriptions, so to speak, that he had,
Yes.
Lawman, Indian scout.
He was a farmer, he was a teamster, he was a scout, a spy, a sheriff, a marshal. He was even an actor at one point.
All of
A terrible actor by all record, but an actor nonetheless.
But talking about acting, and I just have to say, when you are dressed as Wild Bill Hickok, the resemblance is so uncanny. I mean, you are him, and I have to also.
That's the job, you know,
I
is
know,
to become that character.
But I have to interject here too, because I had the opportunity to see Walt portray Wild Bill Hickok at the Joliet Area Historical Museum earlier this year, and it was not the whole performance that he does, but it more centered around Wild Bill Hickok, his time spent in Illinois and
Correct.
coming back to Illinois after he had won the West or whatever. But,
Won it himself.
But I tell you, I have to tell this audience watching that Walt's portrayal of Wild Bill Hickok is absolutely riveting. It draws you into the character, because I didn't know what to expect from a one-man performance character.
And I got nobody to blame if it goes badly.
Well, that's
You
true.
see, this is the thing.
Right. But it is so wonderful.
Thank you.
And I can't help but say that. And many of the people who were at the museum saw Gunslingers on television. They also, and the question...
Well, now, the play came first, you realize.
Right.
The play came first. Gunslingers came to me. I guess they saw video of that play, and they were looking for a Hickok. And they came to me, and then once I got there, I was the director's worst nightmare, because I knew this guy intimately by that time. And
why.
Chris Castle of Castle Pictures was just incredible about it. I said, Chris, you know, this isn't right. You know, what you've written, I mean, this is not the true story. And you told me you were going to do the true story. He said, all right, so what happened? And we reshot things. We rescripted things. In fact, they hired me to write most of the voiceover for Wild Bill, and a lot of it is taken from this play.
Amazing.
Why think of something new when you could just take it, plagiarize myself is what I did.
Well, it's the case method, copy and steal everything. You know?
From yourself, though,
That's
that way
right.
there's no plagiarism.
Exactly. But it was wonderful. So
very kind to say that. I knew I had a hit. I started doing this in 2012. And I knew I had a hit because I always do a question and answer afterwards, Lynn. And I knew I had a hit when I guess I've probably done this show 40, 50 times. I think I've gotten 5 questions about all my children in total afterwards. So people are obviously compelled by this, and they're drawn into it.
Absolutely.
And they forget that they watched me for 25 years being Jackson Montgomery. And to me, that's such an honor and such a compliment.
Yes, a compliment for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I was there during the question and answer, and those who wanted to know more about Wild Bill Hickok but didn't know that much were asking such thoughtful questions.
Very much so.
And then those who knew about Wild Bill Hickok
were asking even more thoughtful questions.
wanted to know more.
Trying to pin me down.
Right.
Well, I spent about 1.5 years researching this, and then about 1 year writing it. It was the first play I ever wrote. It was besides when you're 6 years old. Okay, now you come in and say, which I did plenty of those, believe me. But, and I had, when I got done with all the research, of course, first time out, I wanted to stick everything I knew in this play. Well, I had 120 pages, which would have been like Nicholas Bloody Nickleby. We would have been there for 7 hours. So it's now about 56 pages, and it's still full. It's a full production. There's an Act 1, an intermission, and Act 2. It all takes place in the Number 10 Saloon where he was assassinated. What I found particularly fascinating about him and why he's such an icon, when you see the sheriff or the marshal and the bad guy step into the street for the big showdown, it's because Hickok did.
High noon?
Right, it's because Hickok did. He took the fights to the street so the shopkeeper's window might not get accidentally shot out. Now, people stood behind the guy he was shooting against, but they didn't stand beside him because who knew where that guy's shot was going? But Hickok was an incredible marksman. Truly an incredible marksman with guns that were not near what they are
Tell
today.
us about that, because that's the interesting part about the guns.
Well, he shot what were called Colt Navies. They were an 1851 patent, very popular during the Civil War, quite a serviceable revolver. They were cap and ball. They didn't have bullets. You had to put the cartridge in and a little cap on the nipple, you should pardon the expression, and the hammer would explode that would fire the charge. And a ball, not a bullet, but a ball would come out the end. And he used these guns even well after there was a better technology because that's what he knew. And I
remember the one thing, keep your powder dry.
Keep your powder dry. He changed his powder.
I remember you saying that.
He changed his powder 5-6 times a day to adjust for humidity. And he would carry extra cylinders in his pocket, kind of like a police officer's speed loader. That he could just pop one out and pop the other one in. But he would change them all to adjust for the humidity because he didn't want to misfire. These were guns that did misfire. So he'd change them all out. His first gunfight and I don't want to hit too hard on the killing, but it was a different time then. Justice sometimes didn't have as much to do with the law as it does now. Sometimes, for instance, Bill Hickok always maintained, I never killed a man didn't need killing. And the judges went along with that. They said, yeah, okay, self-defense, because he did only kill guys that needed killing. I don't know how that flies today. But so there was a different brand of justice there. But his first gunfight with Dave Tutt, the one that made him famous in the street, was at 75 yards. At 225 feet with a cap and ball pistol, he shot this man through the heart, which is just an incredible shot. I know it's the death of a human being, and I feel badly about that. But again, in those days, that was looked on a little differently. This is a guy who had ridden him, had ridiculed him, had made a fool of him, and he just had enough.
It's different days, different times.
Different days, different times.
Calls for different
and
things.
This was, for those folks who are considering coming, if you've seen True Grit, that lovely elevated language, the way people used to talk in Victorian America, which is when this is, of course. That's the language. I had finished this play when True Grit came out. I was so glad it did because that's the way I've written this play, is in that language. You'll understand it, but it's that people wrote the way they spoke in those days. And one of my tasks was to find out how Hickok sounded, because there's of course, recordings of his voice. So I looked at a cache of letters at Kansas State that they have there. And he wrote a riding, a walking, a hyphen.
Before all.
Yeah, before any verb, he wrote, a staying over, a riding, a walking over. And he also wrote onced or twiced with the T on the end. I went there onced or twiced. Now, whether that was a local vernacular from that
or just
part
the way he
of
spoke?
Illinois, well, he also had a thing called the plainsman's drawl. And the plainsman's drawl was the way all the plainsmen, all the scouts, all the guides of that day, and I'm talking about Buffalo Bill Cody, Texas Jack Omorundo, Charlie Utter, that's Colorado Charlie, not Texas Charlie, Colorado Charlie Utter. They all wore their hair long. They all had a cavalry roll in their hat. They wore cavalry boots. They wore their guns butt forward, just so that they would have a uniform showing them for what they were, which was the special forces of those days. They rode in the front. They wore no uniform. Now, he served in the Civil War with the Union Army. His family were devout abolitionists and did a lot for the African Americans moving from the South to the North in the Underground Railroad. That was part of what his family did. They were a stop on the Underground Railroad. So Hickok saw that very young. So he, of course, was a scout for the Union Army, but he never joined the Union Army. He'd seen rank bestowed on too many fools. So he served as a civilian scout, but he joined the Confederate Army a dozen times as a spy, which, as you might guess, is extremely dangerous work in those days, because you just had you and your horse and try to run for the picket wire if you were found out, Right, and so the man was truly a hero. He was, however, once he became famous, I think that the mantle of fame weighed very heavily on him. I don't think he was a man made for that. At the same time, he enjoyed himself plenty. He never bought dinner for himself after a certain point. He never had to buy a bottle of whiskey. He was given a gaming stake when he walked into a place because everybody wanted to gamble where Wild Bill gambled. They wanted to have a drink where he drank. They wanted to go to a pleasure palace that he frequented that they might get the same woman that Hickok had. He was a hero. He was the biggest star in America.
I have to say, I'm sitting here intrigued right now.
I hope so.
By all of this.
Because I haven't shut up.
No, but you're such a wonderful interview that way. But what I want to say is there are 2 public performances.
Oh, yes.
To see.
We're actually going to be doing this, not talking about it.
That's
We're going to
right.
actually be doing it.
And there's so much more that Wild Bill Hickok can tell you, that Walt Willey can tell you, that is absolutely amazing. And so the public performances are Saturday, February 28th at 7:30 at the Joliet West High School Auditorium, and again on Sunday, March 1st at the Joliet West High School Auditorium. I'm going to give you some information to call, but then we're not done. We're not done because I want you to tell about the in-school program.
Oh, sure.
But there's so much more.
Well, while you're putting your glasses on and focusing on those little tiny details, let me tell folks that this is done, of course, with a student crew from Joliet West and Central, and that a portion of the proceeds go to support the drama departments in both those schools.
I thought you were going to read that.
I can do that for you, sure.
Without glasses?
Without glasses,
you
because I have contacts in. Of course, no fool I. Plus, I made the poster, which is helpful. So
this is the poster. But Saturday, February 28th, 7:30, and Sunday, March 1st at 2 o'clock, Joliet West High School Auditorium. The tickets are $20 in advance, $25 at the door. So in advance, for tickets, you can call 866, there's a glare there, 967-8167, or go online, Showtix for You. That's the Showtix #4u.com.
And the U is just the letter U.
And just
but if you
the
type in Showtix, it'll come up.
But listen, call me too at the Joliet Township High School if you need to get tickets and you don't want to call the number, or online. Call my office at 815-727-6763. We're going to remind you about that again, but I want.
And I bet if we're really kind,
yes, sir,
they'll take a shot of that poster, put it in still storage, and put that up at the end of the interview. If we're really nice to them.
I think they will.
We'll see.
I know Dick and Millie. Dick and Millie Schuster.
Seem like nice
they
people
are
to
nice
me.
people. They're behind the cameras right now. But anyway, this is so fun to do this with Walt Willey and to learn about Wild Bill Hickok. I I do like the Westerns. I love the story of Wild Bill Hickok. I loved the stories. I'd watch the Westerns
It's
and
one
such.
of the golden ages here. I mean, there was
Yes.
so much going on. The railroad was moving west. The telegraph was moving west. We were expanding. I mean, for so long, Illinois was the edge. It was the edge, and the rest was territories. I mean, Kansas didn't be, I mean, Illinois became a state in 1818. Kansas not till 1861. So there was a long time that we were on the edge of the country.
I think you
know.
should do your homework about all of this because, I mean, clearly you need to learn more, Walt. I don't know how you possibly can. You have all the facts and figures.
I had to because I wanted this to be, you know, I
And it
wanted
is.
to do this man justice because he's a very complicated man. On the one hand, he did more probably in these to benefit women and children living in these rough towns. On the other hand, his gun was his first option. I mean, Wyatt Earp liked to hit people over the head with his gun, not Hickok. He liked to shoot them with his gun. He was a very complicated man, as I think most of our heroes are. When you strip away, the story, when you strip away the legend, and which is what I've done here, and you find the real person beneath, I think you've got. I think that's what's really fascinating.
Well, you've got to come and see the performances to learn how he died. Well, we know he died at number 10.
Another man's number 10 saloon.
Number 10 saloon in Deadwood.
Holding the dead man's hand.
That's right.
Aces and eights.
Oh, you told it.
Was that our quiz?
That was our
I'm
quiz.
Sorry,
but
I did.
no.
I
Dead
opened my
man's
big
hand,
mouth.
aces and eights. When he fell to the table.
All black, though.
All black, and fell to the table.
What was the fifth card?
It was an.
Oh, don't hurt yourself.
Was
Nobody
it
knows.
no,
Nobody
aces
knows.
and
He had
eights.
discarded it.
Was it a jack?
Nobody. Well, some say it was the Jack for Jack McCall who killed him. Some say it was the Queen of Hearts for all the women in his life. It could have been the five of diamonds. Nobody knows because he had discarded it waiting to draw.
All right. So that be said, Wild Bill Hickok,
Yes.
number 10 saloon, Deadwood.
Yes.
Now, in-school program, you're bringing all of that to the students as far as the drama students. I mean, and how fortunate for them to benefit from a Walt Willey, so talented, so accomplished at everything he does, to bring it to our students at Joliet West and Joliet Central High School, District 204. So pleased that you're here. So,
me too.
what are you doing with the students this week at Joliet Central?
Just hanging. No. Well, I worked with the Drama 1 and Drama 2 classes today. The Drama 1 classes are preparing some Shakespearean stuff. And I'm a long ways away from having done Shakespeare. But it's funny how, kind of like riding a horse or riding a bicycle, you can get back on pretty quickly. Spent the day there today. We'll be there tomorrow and Friday as well. They have an in-service day, I think, on Thursday, so we don't get to do it. Yeah, this, you know, to me, now that I'm semi-retired, I guess if I want a day's rest, I need to get a job somewhere, Lynn, because I just feel that if I had had someone come to my high school and let me know that I could be an actor if I wanted to be, I wouldn't have waited until I was in my late 20s to start. Which might not have worked out all that well, frankly, but at least no. And this, it also allows them to know that somebody from a little town 45 minutes away from them.
That's right.
Can do it. So it kind of brings it home a bit. And I love doing it. I mean, I love doing it. I guess this is what I was in television for 30 years for, is so that I could do this now. I didn't know it at the time, you know, but clearly that's why.
Well, when did that realization come to you?
I did this
After All My Children, before, was it something that you had thought about doing?
I taught acting in the late 80s and early 90s at an acting school up in Connecticut. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I hadn't done it in quite a while. I started doing the in-school program at my old high school in Ottawa in December of 2012 was the first one. And then I did, probably a dozen or more that year. 2013, Jackson, Tennessee, and Dallas-Fort Worth, and Mendota, and LaSalle, Peru, and a lot of them in areas here, because it's amazing to me, after saying I didn't know that Hickok was born here, but it's amazing to me that, I mean, everybody knows Lincoln, and I'm not trying to hold those two as equals, but in terms of sheer iconic, I mean, he gives us so many things in our language, like sitting with our back to the wall. Well, you better sit with your back to the wall. That's because Hickok did. Until that last time when he sat with his back to the door, and McCall came in and shot him. You know, he's just. I didn't realize how much stuff had come from him, and I think it's very important, especially for people who live in this area, to know that the man who's really kind of set the standards for a lot of things was a real person who came from here.
Well, I don't think there's too many of us that haven't heard of Wild Bill Hickok, not to the extent that you've talked about him today, but just in terms of gunslingers in the West, you know,
famous
along
marshals,
with Wyatt Earp and
also in Illinois,
Buffalo Bill and I remember the movie Gunfight at OK Corral. That came to my mind earlier when you were talking.
It was just on the other night.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but bringing to the school. You're going to work with the students for these two productions that we talked about.
Well, I'm working with the students within their classrooms at Joliet Central this week, Joliet West the next week, and then using student light operators, sound operators, stage manager, of course, ushers, all of that.
Certainly.
Will be all done by the student body, and a portion of these proceeds goes to the drama departments in those two schools. You know, the arts have been cut. I don't have to tell you.
Oh,
you
we
have
know
a life
that, yes.
in the arts here.
That's right.
And so I'm not telling you anything you don't know in spades.
That's true.
But it's, you know, there's bright, shiny football helmets, and nothing wrong with that. But the arts, I mean, I've seen a couple of the high schools that I've been to, what we were able to raise was the difference between them having one play or no plays that year.
That's right.
It's a shame. It's certainly a reflection of our current economy, and also currently what we hold dear, I think. We're not very invested in the long term anymore. Because look, not every kid's an athlete, not every kid is brilliant, but there are a lot of kids who happen to be brilliant in the arts who are having less and less a chance in their high school careers to shine at that. And that, I think, is a damn shame. And in my small way, I'm trying to do something about it.
And everything you say about that is true. And at District 204, they have an academy, the Arts and Communication Academy, that those students who are interested, not necessarily.
I sat in their office for lunch today, so I know exactly what
you know exactly what I mean. And yes, you can be an athlete in high school, and you can be the best runner on the football team and the great quarterback and such. But after you're done with that career, or with your high school career, not that many go on to play football in college or professional football. However, am I saying this? As an actor?
As an actor, you can have a much longer shelf life.
A longer shelf life, and if
fewer concussions.
Right, true. And if you go on to the arts or music, you take music, you'll have that for the rest of your life. You can do any other profession and have acting as your avocation.
Absolutely.
So there's so much to be said about the arts and what it brings to our lives.
You know,
I just can't say enough.
The arts are something that human beings did once they got their bellies full and had a shelter. The next thing they did was art. So it doesn't come way down the line as we seem to perceive it these days. They found a cave, they found something to eat, they painted the cave. That's the order in which they did it. You know,
right.
They told stories around the fire.
Yeah,
it was a
right.
super important part of our culture, all of our cultures, from the time immemorial.
Yeah, that's exactly the words I was going to use before you said it. Time in memoriam.
Absolutely. It's one of the first things we do is, hey, listen to this one. You know, so
Get to hear the one about.
Hear the one about the bison. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it is a pleasure, Walt, to be with you. To talk with you. Now, these two performances, Saturday, February 28th, and Sunday, March 1st, Joliet West High School Auditorium. These performances, after each one, Walt will do a Q&A, question and answer, so you can ask him all your questions about Wild Bill and whatever else, and then and maybe Jackson Montgomery and all my children. And,
of course,
and
Jackson was a big part of my life for a long time.
And you have the distinction of being Erica Kane's last husband. on all my children.
Or as her real life husband likes to say, your best and your last.
Absolutely.
I think he was really.
Well, I think that he would be the best in the last for sure. But he will do a meet and greet reception.
Of course.
So it's going to be an awful lot of fun, and it's going to be it's wonderful. Let me tell you, it's a wonderful experience to share the afternoon with Wild Bill Hickok, Jackson Montgomery, and always with Walt Willey.
You're very kind to say that. Thank you for your time today.
And thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For being with us.
It's a firm hand grip.
Right. This is Lynn Lichtenauer. It's been a pleasure subbing for Richard Fredrickson. Maybe we won't have him come back. What do you think? Thanks.
You know, in the old days, they spit in their hand first. You want to try it that way?
Oh, what do we do?
Well, the hand you got to shake, and not that hand. Now what are you going to do?
Okay, wait a second. I'll do it. I'll try it.
Nobody wants to see us do this. I just wanted to see if I could get you to do it.
Well, I spit in the wrong hand.
You spit in the wrong hand.
What do you know?
It's all right.
All right. Thank you so much again.
Bad custom anyway,
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you for being with
pleasure.
us in Joliet, Illinois, and on Channel 6, Joliet Cable. Our audiences will love it.
I
love you.
certainly hope so. And if they don't, for some reason, get the information, they can go to my website as well.
Oh, yes, give your website.
WaltWilleyWorld.com, and you can go to the personal appearances calendar there, and you'll find that will take you on a link right to showtixforyou.com and get your tickets that way, and visit my website as well.
How easy can that be?
We're making this so easy. There's no excuse.
Absolutely none.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.